evolution and
So I guess the interesting thing the question that I had specifically and related to constructed languages, which is of course a language that is not a naturally evolved language similar to English or Spanish or something that has kind of had a background and a trajectory dating from, if you look back far enough to the earliest grunts and the kind of the kinetic sort of languages that the proto-humans had, all the way to what we speak now. That evolutionary path is what could be considered a largely passive path. Passive in the sense that there were no real points that its trajectory was taken into consideration and it was actually endowed with certain characteristics that might make it do its job better. For example, if we look at computer languages, which are not designed for people to speak, they're designed for, for the hardware to talk to the software or whatever. These are languages that have been optimized to achieve a certain goal. There's a certain thing they need to do, and they can either do it reasonably well or they can't. And if they can't, there's things that you can do to those languages in order to make them better. So I thought an interesting question, and certainly I'm not even close to the first to have asked it, is what is it about human languages that makes their evolution kind of more passive than actually active? And why haven't we actively engineered our human languages to more clearly suit the purposes of communication? If you look at the shape of a wing or a propeller or anything that's actually engineered, the way that the tripod is put together, the way that a camera shutter works, these are things that were mocked up, prototyped, accidentally or not, in the beginning stages. They worked reasonably well, but then future reiterations of them took into account like, wow, this thing would be a little bit better if we tried another little flange here, and then we added some grease here, and then painted it this color, and then see if that one works. Wow, it does the job a little bit better. And a little bit better means that maybe it used a little bit less energy, or it did the job a little bit better than it did before. And this active evolution, which takes into account what it does now, how it can be made to make it better, that basic kind of scientific method of improving things, as far as I know, has never been really adequately addressed to the conundrum of human languages. Human languages such that we speak every day around the world are largely the product of accidents, of kludgy mistakes that are made long enough where they just become usage. They never have really been tinkered with in such a way. I mean, I'm not saying that they don't generate new words, but the way that they generate new words is largely accidental as opposed to really being engineered. And if there's a reason that it hasn't been, I'd like to know what that reason is. And I don't want to hear that it's just laziness or that nobody has really thought that we really need to think differently or speak more clearly, because that's just, if that's the only reason, then, let's get to it. So the idea is, what is it about human languages that make them resistant to that basic active engineering, the same engineering that we would require of anything else that we use around us as humans? If you look at virtually anything that we use as tools, and language is very much a tool, all the tools that we have around us have been very deliberately modified and reshaped and reformulated to be better at what they do, using less energy and cheaper, faster, whatever, the kind of the standard, the mode. But what is it about human languages that have made us just ignore that basic engineering context in reference to how they evolve? They evolve largely passively and not actively. And more specifically, what would happen if we start to try to actively engineer our languages to more adequately address the basic communicative issues? How can I say something to you that's even more clear than it was in a language that has been spoken in the past, using less energy and going from one head to the other faster? And again, ESP being the ideal scenario, but short of ESP, if everybody can't use it, what are we going to do that will enable us not only to speak between humans, but also between perhaps extraterrestrial sentience? Again, because we're dealing with raw energy. We're dealing with the energy of something that can allow us to transmit data from one head to the other, or head is just the human word for it. So I guess the main focus of the energy language is how to try to actively involve all of our perceptions through a new type of language that will somehow, if possible, and I don't know that it's possible, I think it is, but somehow enable us to have a slightly more rich understanding of the world around us, because we're really, and I think for the first time, trying to upgrade our consciousness through a deliberate, evolved language. And again, it may well not be possible, but it sure as hell is interesting. And if that's the only use of it, then, so be it. But should I